Gridiron Central is sponsored by Georgia Northwestern Technical College, Riverside Automotive Group, Gridiron.
Welcome to Gridiron Central. It's the Wednesday preview show. We have some great games to talk about, previewing what could be a very interesting weekend, a weekend that might make the murky playoff picture and the murky region title races just a little bit clearer. As always, my tag team partner, Matt Davis, is beside me, the voice of football at 95.7 The Ridge. Matt, last weekend, any big surprises for you?
Gosh, Halloween's at the end of the month. Last weekend was absolutely insane. We saw several overtime games. Rome won in overtime, basically because of a blocked extra point at the end of the game. That was very interesting. Let's see, Tryon got beat by Mount Zion. I think that surprised most people.
Yeah.
Close game between Haralson County and Rockmart, in which
another overtime game. Rockmart lost in overtime.
Yep, Rockmart lost that one. It seems like there was one other overtime game that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, man, last week as a whole was a big surprise to me, and my picks went down the tubes. You also have to mention the fact that Pickens beat Cedartown,
yes,
which Pickens is, I think they're for real. I think they've proven that at the last couple of weeks. They beat Cass, and then they turn around and beat Cedartown.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good football team.
I'm not so sure they're a pretty good football team. What we do know is Cedartown's not as good as we thought they were. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show, and we're going to go ahead and start off with this week's picks and predictions. We start off Sonoraville, who only has one win on the season, traveling to Adairsville. 97% of our UPick'em users believe the Phoenix will lose to the Tigers. Matt, did the Tigers win this one easy?
I would have to say so. I think Sonoraville really has problems on both sides of the ball. Meanwhile, Adairsville, they can more or less score at will. They have a huge offense, and it's led by a quarterback who is a sophomore, Marcus Childers. He can throw, he can run, he makes pretty mature decisions for a sophomore, and he's got weapons. He's got a couple of guys in the backfield with him, Kyle Adams, Tristan Smith. Those guys can run, and they can open up the passing game for him. And I tell you what, Hiram Velez is one of the best receivers I've seen in high school football the last couple of years. He's not a very, very big guy. He's probably about 5'8", something like that, about 160 pounds. But he gets open and he catches passes. And when he does, if he's in space, he's gone. You can kiss him goodbye because he also has some speed. So Adairsville is just going to be too much for Sonoraville's defense to handle. They're going to outscore them, and they may end up scoring 50 or 60 points in this game. And Sonoraville's going to have some problems in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think Adairsville's going to win. They're probably going to win going away. Could be running clock in the second half. Another big win for the Tigers. Sonoraville, of course, we've talked about them. Tough season this year. Hopefully they're getting better every week. Hopefully they can build on something toward the end of this season going into next year. Moving on.
Here's something I did want to mention, too, though. After Adairsville, Sonoraville has Gordon Central, Cartersville, and LFO. They may not win a game the rest of the year.
You know, that's a tough road to hoe for them. If they're going to get into the playoffs, they're going to have to at least win one, if not two of those games, without a doubt.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Armurchie at Dade County, 72% of our UPick'em users believe that the winless Wolverines will beat Armurchie. Of course, Dade County lost to Coosa last week. Armurchie lost to Chattooga. The lopsided score is a little misleading as Armurchie led going into the fourth quarter. Turnovers and mistakes cost them big in that one. Matt, can the Indians rebound and get a win at Dade?
I don't know, man. Speaking of what you just mentioned, you said through three quarters it was a close game.
Yes.
Part of the reason for that is Armurchie trimmed down on the penalties.
Yeah.
They didn't make the mental mistakes that we've seen them make. And, let's face it, they played pretty good on defense, and they avoided some of the problems they've had throughout. The unfortunate thing for them is then in the fourth quarter, things just fell apart. But what I go back to in terms of Armurchie, if you look at one thing they've been consistent about is they've not been able to get in the end zone very often at all. And I think that is one of the main things that hurt them last week. Yes, at the end of the day, 3 of 5 touchdowns that Chattooga scored came because of turnovers, but Armurchie did not score very many points in that game, and that is a major problem. They scored 1 touchdown and a field goal, and that was it. You're going to have to score more points than that if you're going to win very many football games, and that's the reason why in this game I'm going to go with Dade County. I think Armurchie can hang with them, but they're going on the road. They're going up against a team that is scoring about 20 points a game, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
They are able to get in the end zone, and I was surprised that Dade County got beat by Coosa last week. But I will be surprised if Dade County gets beat 2 weeks in a row. And, of course, and speaking of getting beat 2 weeks in a row, they've lost every game this year.
Yes,
and that's a little bit of a surprise to me. But I think they pick up a win here.
Well, I'm going to agree with you on this one. The other thing about this we have to say is Dade County's 0-3 in the region right now. And one more loss, and that just about eliminates them from any chance to get into the playoffs. And a lot of people going into the season thought that Dade County would be one of those top 4 teams that got to the playoffs. Again, last week Armurchie had, again, I don't want to say it's a meltdown, but a couple of key mistakes in the fourth quarter that caused it. As Matt mentions, Armurchie's got to score more points. I think that Armurchie's going to rear up and bite somebody these last 3 or 4 games. I don't think it's going to be Dade County, but Armurchie's going to pull an upset somewhere along the way. They are getting better. I saw them lose to Tryon early in the year. I saw them lose to Model, and then I saw them lose to Chattooga the other night. Armurchie's getting better. They're not going to be good enough to get to the playoffs, but I think they're going to be good enough to possibly pull a win here in the end. I don't think they're going to beat Dade County, but somewhere along the line, Armurchie's going to reach up and get somebody. Speaking of a team that probably will not reach up and get somebody, Murray County travels to Calhoun. 100% of our You Pick 'em users believe that the Yellow Jackets win this game. Matt?
I've expressed this for several weeks. I've really felt for the kids at Murray County, and I've applauded them for getting out there and doing this every week. But the question that comes to my mind is, do we really have to have this game? This is going to be atrocious. And the one thing that I hope for in this game, that Hal Lamb will have mercy on this team, because this is going to get ugly in a hurry. There's no question there will be a running clock in the second half. And, quite honestly, I don't even think that the Calhoun Yellow Jacket fans are going to enjoy being at this game. It's going to be that bad. So there's not really much else I can say about this one. I think everybody's going to agree with the fact that Calhoun runs away with this one very quickly.
Yeah, Calhoun's going to run away with this one. I think Calhoun will have mercy. I think the big thing, though, you're going to see a lot of second stringers, a lot of third stringers in there. The thing is, those kids are going to play hard. No matter who the competition, you can't fault them for that. So even if the score's big, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. One thing I will mention, I caught a lot of some flack this week and the past couple of weeks about how much we've talked about Calhoun, and then everybody feels like there's this favoritism toward Calhoun. It's not so much a favoritism of the fact that we talk about them so much. The thing that people got to remember is over the last 4 years, they played 60 games. That's almost 2 full more seasons than any other local team has played. Something else about Calhoun, they're on like a 26-game winning streak. A 26-game winning streak, a 40-plus game regular season winning streak, and they haven't lost a region game in a decade. When you have that kind of dominance, you're going to get talked about every now and then, not to mention they've been the only team left alive in the playoffs after the second or third round the past 2 or 3 years. So obviously, Calhoun's going to get talked about. They deserve the recognition. Obviously, they're going to win this game big. Moving on. Chattooga at Coosa. 59% of our You Pick 'em users believe the Indians will get yet another region win, and the Eagles will be handed another region loss. Matt, what do you think?
I picked against Coosa last week, and the reason I did was because going into the game, they were averaging only 6 points a game. Yeah. They've had problems up until that point getting into the end zone. Now, that could have been a breakthrough game for them. I'm sure they built a lot of confidence from that game and have moved forward. I mean, it's obvious when you look at the score. And also, they played that game on the road as well. Yeah. So that makes a difference in my mind. But I've also had the opportunity, as you had last week, to see Chattooga. And the one thing that is usually true about Chattooga is they're going to have at least a couple of guys on the field that can run. And they do. Their quarterback, Nigel Dickerson, and also Ron L. Sims, who's been a running back there for a few years, those guys can run and have a tremendous amount of speed, and they'll try to get to the edge. And when they do, you better be ready for it, because they're gonna cover some ground, no doubt about it. I'm going to go with Chattooga in this game. I think Coosa will be a formidable foe, but I think they put a lot onto the field last week, and it's going to be hard for them to come back in this game and give the same effort. Or I may be completely wrong about that. That may be the reason why they do well in this game, is because of the confidence they built and the fact that they're improving. But after seeing the speed that Chattooga can have, if Coosa starts making mistakes like we saw Armurchie do last week, that is going to spell disaster for Coosa. So I think Chattooga, somewhere along the way, is going to find a way to take advantage of their speed and will win this game.
Well, I'm going to go on the other side here, because I think the same thing about Chattooga. Chattooga is one of those teams, they have a lot of great athletes and everything else, but their mistakes tend to kill them. I think Chattooga is going to be the team you got to worry about making the mistakes here, because if they make the mistakes, Coosa is going to be very opportunistic. They're going to take advantage of those, and they're going to win the game. Guess what? I'm going against Matt. I'm going against You Pick 'em users. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I think Coosa came out of a bye week at 0-5. Chad Perry has got the kids' heads level, which is exactly what I said the past couple of weeks is, Coosa, don't get down yet, because you've already played the 2 toughest teams in the region. I think Coosa is a playoff team in Region 7 AA. Obviously, you lose to Chattooga, I'm going to take that back. But right now, I think Coosa has the easiest road of anybody, other than obviously Calhoun or possibly Pepperell, of the remaining teams to get to that playoff spot. If they can possibly win out because they've already played who I consider Pepperell and Calhoun the two toughest teams in Region 7AA, in my humble opinion.
So we agree on one thing.
Yes.
Whoever makes the least mistakes is going to be the team that ends up winning this game.
That and whoever scores the most points will win the game as well. I think we're both in agreement on that one, crazily enough. You know, at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Coosa. They're at home. And while Chachuga's in the same boat of if they control their own destiny, Coosa does as well. I think their road's a little bit easier. Win this game, and the momentum will continue to build. I think there's a lot of momentum on Coosa's sidelines. There's going to be a lot more after Friday night, in my opinion. Right after the commercial break, we're going to talk about some other key games, including a classic matchup between two undefeated teams in AAA.
Begin your future at Georgia Northwestern Technical College. We offer degrees, diplomas, and certificates in over 200 programs of study. Choose a career in business, health, industrial, or public service. With the flexibility of day, evening, and online classes at any of our 5 campus locations, getting your education at GNTC has never been more convenient. There are many financial aid options available, including student loans. Apply now. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your college, your town, your future.
Welcome back to the show. We always like to thank our sponsors, Georgia Northwestern Technical College and Riverside Automotive Group. And now back to all the wonderful prognostication. Next game, Gordon Lee at Darlington. 97% of our U-Pick'em users believe the Tigers will get this Region 6A win. Matt, any reason to disagree?
Well, both teams come into this region contest perfect in the region. Gordon Lee, 5-1, impressive record. But here's the difference. Darlington, Christian Academy, Cartersville, and Chattooga. That was their first 3 games of the year. For Gordon Lee, LFO, Coahuila Creek, and All Murchie. If you're keeping score, you know the difference between those few games. And to me, that is the difference. And I feel like I've said this the last few weeks. That's the difference in this contest. Yes, Gordon Lee has an impressive record coming into the game, but Darlington, I think, has had the toughest competition throughout. And so I think that is really going to bode well for them in this contest. You know, one of the things worth noting is Darlington really had some major hiccups in the game last week. They turned the ball over 2 times early in the game, and they survived that contest against Christian Heritage, which Christian Heritage, in their first year in GHSA, let's face it, they've been pretty impressive.
Yes.
So that was some pretty good competition, despite the fact that Christian Heritage, I believe, only has 28 kids on their roster. And they just, apparently, they've got 28 kids that can play football. But Darlington, I still think they have a pretty good amount of talent. I think they're going to win this game, but I do think that this could potentially be a close game. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. It would not surprise me at all to hear a halftime score that's really close, even a third quarter score that's really close. The games at Darlington almost gave a game away last week. I would not want to be in practice at Darlington this week because I have a funny feeling they're getting blistered a little bit by Coach Eighth and the rest of the coaching staff getting ready for Gordon Lee and saying if you play like you did last week, you're going to lose this game. Darlington's not going to play like they did last week. They're going to win the game probably by at least 10 points. Moving on, Model at Pepperell. 97% of our U-Pick'em users believe that Pepperell will win this game. Just a little... Coming into this game, Pepperell is undefeated. Model is undefeated in the region. However, they have not played Pepperell or Calhoun, probably the 2 best teams in the region. Pepperell's 1 region loss last week to Calhoun. Obviously, they got the beat down last week. I'm going to go ahead and pick it right here. I'm going to say Pepperell. I'm going to agree. Pepperell's going to win this game. Model has not shown me yet that they can beat a team of Pepperell's caliber. They've played some good. They've played well. They've played good, but they haven't shown me that they're capable of stepping up to that next level. Obviously, if Model beats Pepperell, all of a sudden we're not only talking about playoffs for Model, we're talking about the number 2 spot in Region 7AA and a home playoff game, but they have to beat Pepperell to be talking about those things. I still think Model has a great shot at the playoffs, but they're going to get the first region loss on Friday. Matt, do you agree?
We learn a lot from this game. That is something I think everybody's going to agree on. And we said all along that you have Calhoun in 7AA, then you have Pepperell, and then you have everybody else. This weekend, that is the theory is tested. Let's face it, that is going to happen in this game. Here's something to keep in mind, folks. The last time that Model beat Pepperell was back in good old 1987. I looked that up on the Georgia Historian site, so if I'm wrong, then talk to them. But that is what I looked up today, and that really actually surprised me. So will this be the first time in a quarter of a century that Model is able to beat Pepperell? And again, like I say, I could be wrong about that, but that's what the website said. So that's what I'll stick to in this conversation. And quite honestly, I don't remember the last time that Model beat Pepperell. Would you think?
You know what? In '87, I was a freshman at East Rome High School. You know, I know that East Rome had a pretty good team that year. They made the single A playoffs. I believe they lost to Brookstone in the first round. Can't honestly tell you how Model or Pepperell did that year, but that would not surprise me at all. So I'm guessing you're picking Pepperell?
I'm going with Pepperell. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're more experienced. You know, Model has definitely made some strides. I think they're a better football team this year than we saw the last couple of years. How much better? I'm not sure, because we've talked about this throughout the year. Yep. A lot of teams in 7AA are down this year, and some of those teams Model has played and beaten this year, and teams that they haven't beaten in the last few years. And so you got to take that into account. I don't ever want to take anything away from a team that's having success that they haven't had in a few years, because I think that's awesome. And it makes it a lot more interesting to watch the teams in the region. But I think it has to come to the conversation, and I think that that is going to be something that comes out in this particular game. I just think Pepperell's going to be a bit better than Model is in this one.
Definitely so. Obviously, we're both picking Pepperell in this game. Moving on, Central Carrollton, a 79% favorite. According to our U-Pick'em users, over Rockmart. Rockmart lost in a region game last week in overtime. Any reason the Jackets could upset Central Carrollton in this one?
You know what, man? Probably, because I'm picking Central Carrollton, and it's kind of funny because 2 weeks ago I picked against Rockmart. They won. Yep. Last week I picked Rockmart. They lost. So whoever I pick is obviously going to be the team that ends up losing. But I think it's a safer bet to go with Central Carrollton in this one. You know, I think the fact that they're averaging more points than Rockmart, giving up less points than Rockmart, this is real scientific, by the way. Plus, they have a better record. All those things put together. I haven't seen either one of these teams, but I got to go with Central Carrollton.
Yeah, I'm going to say I think that coming off the emotional loss last week, Rockmart needs a region win badly if they want to get to the playoffs. You know, beating Central Carrollton would be a big upset. I just don't see it happening. I think Central Carrollton wins that one. Speaking of another game that would be a huge upset if a local team would win, Rome traveling to East Paulding. 83% of our U-Pick'em users believe the Wolves will lose this game. Matt, any reason to think they'll pull the upset?
Well, before I get to my pick, I want to ask you a question.
Certainly.
Because this is something that you talk about quite a bit.
Yeah.
Rome, surprisingly enough, they're ranked number 2 in terms of offense in their region this year. They're averaging 41 points a game. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Let's go back to Rome fans. Get ready to hate me yet again. Let's go to the one game in all this that matters. That was against Allatoona. Rome, yes, they scored 17 points, and that goes into the offensive average. However, 2 of those were kickoff returns for touchdowns. Take that away, and offensively, Rome only kicked a field goal against the only really good team they've played all year long. That's what I look at. Against Allatoona, their offense was worth 3 points. Allatoona scored, what, 38, 42 points? Mm-hmm. East Paulding, by all accounts, is at least as good as Allatoona, if not better. So, excuse me, wow. Yeah, I'm picking against Rome. I've said this all year long. They're going to lose to East Paulding. Rome is yet to show me any reason for me to think otherwise. Rome's a good team. Rome's a playoff caliber team. They might be a team that could win a round, maybe even 2 in the playoffs if they get lucky, depending on the brackets, how the brackets fall, but they're not going to beat East Paulding.
I'm going with you on this one. I think East Paulding is going to win this game. Rome kind of surprised me last week. I thought they would lose. It went into overtime. They won by 1 point. They're proving that they can play in the close games. I think they'll be competitive in this game, but the thing that really gets my attention about this particular matchup is the fact that East Paulding has pitched 1, 2, 3, 4 shutouts this season, and they're giving up only about 7 points a game. Now, granted, they haven't played Allatoona yet, and that is going to be quite a scrap.
That'll be the region championship game for all practical purposes.
You're not kidding. But they've proven that their defense can do it time and time again. And with what you said about Rome's offense, I'm not so sure they're going to be as successful against a defense like this, like they've been the last few games. So I'm going to go with East Paulding in this game. Rome has really surprised some folks throughout the season. Don't be surprised if they continue to do so. But I got to go with what I see as kind of the more sure-shot team in this one, and that's East Paulding.
You know, and I'll just say this right now. You know, when the season started, I said Rome's 2 toughest opponents, Allatoona and East Paulding, they were going to lose to both of them and be the number 3 seed in the playoffs. Obviously, Rome beats East Paulding. All of that changes. Again, I don't see that happening. I guess you can prove me wrong with the win. Moving on, Southwest Atlanta Christian at Tryon. 90% of our You Pick 'em users believe the Bulldogs bounced back from last week's overtime loss. Matt, can they do it?
What's going on at Southwest Atlanta Christian? They've had to forfeit a couple of games. Somebody was telling me the other day that they had to forfeit one game because they didn't have any pads or helmets or something like that. Some wild stuff is going on. And with that, they have played a few games this year. They're averaging 2 points per game, giving up 38 points per game. Obviously, with that said, there's some major problems. Now, Tryon's got some problems of their own, as we saw last week. They got beat by Mount Zion, and believe it or not, they have not won a region contest yet this year.
Yep.
So that is definitely troubling for them. They need to win this game. They have to win this game, and they will win this game. They're just going to outmatch Southwest Atlanta Christian by leaps and bounds. I think Tryon wins.
Yeah, big thing here, too, with Tryon is, you got to win this game because next week you're playing Gordon Lee, and that's going to be a must-win game if you want to get into the playoffs due to the power rankings. Obviously Tryon's got to beat Southwest. I think they will. Hopefully they're not looking ahead to next week in Gordon Lee. Moving on, Unity Christian at Covenant Christian. 90% of our You Pick 'em users believe the Lions will get another win. This was a region foe in the North region of the ICSGA. Matt, do the Lions win this game?
Well, I think one of the things that we're going to agree on in terms of this contest is that both teams have circled this on the schedule, and they both want to win this game as much, if not more, than any other game that they play in the regular season this year. And the reason being is, think about what happened last year at the end of the season. Championship game, Unity wins, 4 overtimes. They have to give the championship back because of ineligible players. And so, I know for a fact that Joe Curtis really wants to win this game.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And that just comes naturally from what happened, and kind of you got a little bit of a rivalry going there between these two teams. With that said, I put a lot of faith into Joe Curtis in terms of being a coach and being a leader of this team. And he's been teaching these kids all year long how to be football players, because let's face it, a lot of these players that are in this league and on this particular team, they weren't football players up until maybe a couple of years ago, and some of them not until maybe a game or two ago. They're improving as the season's gone on. I'm going to go with Unity in this game just because I believe in the coaching staff and the fact that they're going to put a game plan in place, and they've been working hard to get ready for this team, and they've got this team figured out, I guarantee you, before they get onto the football field. Will that make enough difference? I think it will. I think Unity Christian will win this game somehow.
I have a lot of faith in Joe Curtis and the Lions coaching staff as well. However, I also have a little bit more faith that when two teams have that rematch game, the team that lost the first time has more to prove than the team that won the first time. Not to mention most of the Unity players that are here weren't even on that team. Covenant Christian, these teams are fairly even from everything we can tell right now. Covenant Christian has had this game circled, and they've worked all off season for it very hard. It's at Covenant Christian. If it was at Ben Brady Field, I might go in Unity's favor. In this game, there's no way I'm going in Unity's favor. Not when they have to travel there. Not when Covenant's the team that lost the 4 overtime game last year. I think Covenant's going to be 7 points better. I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think Covenant Christian wins this game. Again, we're disagreeing on a game. One more game to talk about, and it is a biggie. Gordon Central, undefeated on the season, undefeated in their region at Cartersville, undefeated on the season, undefeated in their region. For all practical purposes, the winner of this game should be your region champion in that AAA region. 69% of our You Pick 'em users believe the Purple Hurricanes will win this game at home. The average score of the game since it's our tie-break game, Cartersville 28, Gordon Central 25, a very, very close point margin there. Matt, who's your pick?
Man, this one is a tough one. This is the toughest game of the week to pick in my mind, and it's going to be the best game to go to as well in my mind. This is one I wish I could get the opportunity to go see, but I can't be in 2 places at one time, obviously. I'm going to go with Gordon Central in this one. One of the things that Cartersville has not done this year that Gordon Central has been able to do 3 times is pitch a shutout. Now, granted, that was not to necessarily good teams or teams at the time that were really trying to find their legs, maybe have improved, but at that point, we're not doing very well. But Gordon Central has been extremely consistent on offense. As a matter of fact, I looked at the averages, and I think both of these teams are averaging 39 points a game.
Yes.
And Gordon Central, surprisingly enough, is giving up less points a game than Cartersville is. Now, I think a lot of that you can attribute to Cartersville has maybe played a couple of teams a little bit more sound in terms of offense than Gordon Central has. So you definitely have to look at that. But for some reason, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, it is purely hunch. My mind is telling me to pick Cartersville in this game, But whatever else you want to call that sense is telling me to go with Gordon Central in this one. So I'm going to go with them.
You know what?
Though.
You know, this is quite honestly one of the biggest games Gordon Central has played in probably over a decade. I mean, the Warriors really have a chance to, if they beat Cartersville, not only are they the odds-on favorites to win the region title, but the other thing about that means is that that's home field advantage, at least through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, possibly 3 rounds in the playoffs. Jess, I'm already talking playoffs here. This is huge. Cartersville knows this. Gordon Central knows this. You know, Cartersville, they've been there before, you know, but it's been a little while. Gordon Central, they've been there before, but it's been a really, really long time. You know, most of the players on this team were probably in elementary school the last time Gordon Central was anywhere close to this good, and Gordon Central's never started a season 6-0. So, in all honesty, this is a best ever season possibly for Gordon Central. You know, you look at the defensive average I saw coming in is in AAA, Gordon Central's the 4th or 5th best team.
Gridiron Central is sponsored.
Remember, the first 3 games they played in the season were not against very good opponents, however, so that kind of helps bolster those numbers. Offense is very good. I think you're going to see somewhat of a track meet in this game. And I've always said when Gordon Central can get this Gordon Central offense in a track meet, you know, I think Cartersville's great too. Don't get me wrong. I think they're a phenomenal team. And I guess I just talked myself out of it. It's at Cartersville. Gordon Central, they're not used to being there. Cartersville, they've been there before. I'm going to switch from that, and I'm change my pick mid-sentence here. I'm going to go with Cartersville. Cartersville at home. They're used to winning. Everything being said, Gordon Central proved me wrong. Of course, when I pick against teams from Gordon County, especially the one with the Yellow Jackets as mascot, I don't end up doing well. So hopefully that holds true here.
I'll tell you what, man, last week I think in high school I went 4-6. And when I look back at it, though, it's hard to say in the same sentence I went 4-6, but my picks were decent. But I can say that. 4-6, my picks were decent because a few of those games were overtime.
Oh, 3 overtime games mixed in.
Yeah,
so.
And the rest were upsets.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting how these things go.
It definitely is. And, of course, on Friday night, we will have all of your coverage at PrepCentralOnline.com, live scoring from the games later on, articles, videos and photos, and of course join us later that evening for the Gridiron Central Scoreboard Show. We'll tell you who won, why they won, show you all of the highlights. For Kevin Myrick, Austin Wiggins, Matt Davis, I'm Jim Allred saying we'll see you on the sidelines on Friday.
By Georgia Northwestern Technical College, Riverside Automotive Group,